Hello everyone, myself I am Divya, working as Assistant Professor in Marri Laxman Reddy Institute of Technology and Management from the Department of Chemistry. In today's session, I am going to discuss the ecosystem from the environmental sciences. So in the ecosystem, the following topics I have covered before: the definition, classification, and the function and structure of ecosystem. So in today's session, I'm going to start with the flow of energy and the biogeochemical sciences. So what is a flow of energy? So energy transfers from the producers to the tertiary consumers. As we have seen the food chain before, a food chain starts with the producers. Producers are the plants, and it ends with the consumers, tertiary consumers. So flow of energy is nothing but transfer of the energy from the first starting, that is producers, and the tertiary consumers through a series of organisms. So we will be seeing many organisms through this series as seen in the food chain. This concept of energy is called as 10% of flow. In each level or the step of an ecosystem is nearly 90% of energy is lost as heat. During the process of this transfer of energy, at each level we can see that nearly about 90% of the energy is lost as the heat, and only 10% of energy is transferring at each tropic level. Only 10% of energy will be transferring from one tropic level to the other tropic level. So simply we are going to term it as the concept of energy is a 10% flow, because only 10% of energy is only transferring from one tropic level to the another tropic level. The remaining 90% of the energy will be lost as the heat. So as I said, the energy transfers from the producers and it continues to the tertiary consumers. So plants will be a primary producers. And why we are calling it as a producer? Because plants can prepare food by themselves by a process called photosynthesis by using of the sunlight. And the next topic we have is biogeochemical science. So the term biogeochemical is derived from bio means biosphere, geo means geological components, and chemical meaning the elements that move through the cycle. So we have in this under this topic we have many cycles. So biogeochemical we can split into a bio, which means the biosphere, and geo is the geological components present, and we know chemicals are the elements that move through the cycle. The matter on the earth is conserved and present in the form of atoms, since the matter can neither be created nor destroyed, as we know, and it is recycled in the earth system in various forms. The earth obtains energy from sun, which is radiated back as the heat, and rest all other elements are present in a closed system. So major elements include carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. So these elements are recycled through the biotic and abiotic components of the ecosystem. We know ecosystem is made by the or we can call it as the interaction between the biotic and abiotic components. Biotic components are the living components, and the abiotic components are the non-living components. So these elements, what are the elements? Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. So these elements can be recycled through the living and non-living components that are biotic and non-biotic. Biogeochemical cycles are basically divided into two types. One is gaseous cycles and the sedimentary cycles. So we can classify the biogeochemical cycles into two types. One is gaseous and the sedimentary. So under gaseous we can see carbon, oxygen, nitrogen and the water cycle. But under sedimentary, we have a sulfur, phosphorus and rock cycles. So now we can see one by one cycles. So first we'll see with the water cycle. The water from the different water bodies evaporates, cools, condenses and falls back to the earth as a rain. So we have many water bodies. So from the water bodies, the water will be evaporated and it cools and condenses. Again it comes back to the earth as a rain. This biogeochemical cycle is responsible for maintaining the weather conditions. So this process or this cycle is responsible for the maintaining weather conditions. Water in its various forms interacts with the surroundings and changes the temperature and pressure of the atmosphere. So this cycle is responsible for the changing the temperature and pressure in the atmosphere. Coming to the next type of cycle, carbon cycle, it is a gaseous cycle. So it is one of the biogeochemical cycles in which carbon is exchanged among the biosphere, geosphere, hydrosphere and atmosphere. And all green plants use the carbon dioxide and sunlight for photosynthesis. We know for the process of photosynthesis, the producers or the plants will take the carbon dioxide and releases the oxygen. So all green plants uses the CO2 and sunlight for the process of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is nothing but preparation of their own food. Carbon is thus stored in the plant. The green plants, when dead, are buried into the soil that gets converted into a fossil fuels after years later and made from carbon. And these fossil fuels, when burnt, releases the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We know the plants will be containing carbon. So when plants die, they will be buried into the soil. So after years later, we get as a fossil fuels. When we burn the fossil fuels, it will be releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And the next type of cycle is a nitrogen cycle, and it is also a gaseous cycle under biogeochemical cycle. So nitrogen is converted into several forms and it gets circulated through the atmosphere and various ecosystems such as terrestrial and marine ecosystem. So we know we have studied the two terms terrestrial and marine ecosystem under the classification. Terrestrial is a land and marine is a aquatic or the water. So we can see that nitrogen is converted into several forms and it gets circulated in the atmosphere through the terrestrial and marine ecosystems. Nitrogen is essential element of life, and the nitrogen in the atmosphere is fixed by the nitrogen fixing bacteria present in the root nodules of leguminous plant and made available to the soil and plants, and it is one of the most important element to the life. And the next type of cycle we have is the oxygen cycle. This biogeochemical cycle moves through the atmosphere, the lithosphere and the biosphere. Oxygen is abundant element on our earth and it is found in the elemental form in the atmosphere to the extent of 21%. So the next cycle we have is phosphorus cycle. It comes under sedimentary cycle under biogeochemical cycles. So it is a biogeochemical cycle and this phosphorus moves through the hydrosphere and lithosphere biosphere. So it will be transferring through the hydrosphere, lithosphere and the biosphere. Phosphorus is extracted by the weathering of rocks. So it is mainly extracted by the weathering of rocks. And due to rains and erosion, phosphorus is washed away in the soil and water bodies. Whenever it is a rain or the erosion, So we can see that phosphorus is washed away into the soil and water bodies. Plants and animals obtain this phosphorus through the soil and water and they grow. So the phosphorus cycle, the element phosphorus will be transferring through the hydrosphere, lithosphere and the biosphere. And we can extract this phosphorus by the weathering of rocks. And whenever it is a rains or erosion, the phosphorus will be washed away, or it is removed, or it will be getting into the soil and water. So what is happening? Plants and animals obtain this phosphorus from the soil and water and they will be growing. And the next type of cycle is a sulfur cycle. So it is also a sedimentary cycle under biogeochemical cycle. This biogeochemical cycle moves through the rocks, water bodies and living systems. Sulfur is released into the atmosphere by the weathering of rocks. As same as the phosphorus, even the sulfur can be obtained by the weathering of rocks. And this can be converted into sulfates. This sulfur is getting converted into sulfates. And these sulfates are taken up by the microorganisms and plants, and this they convert into a organic forms. So the sulfur we can obtain by the weathering of rocks, and the released sulfur will be converted into sulfates, and this sulfates will be consumed or taken by the microorganisms and the plants, and these microorganisms and plants convert these sulfates into organic forms. So these are the differences. Thank you.